Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Wednesday, the 16th of October. So, what are we talking about today? Well, I've always been a person that, the older I get, the more I know, the more I know that I don't know, right? So, I'm always learning, and you can't stop learning, all right? It's very important. So, it was posted yesterday by Hearthman and greatly appreciated. And that's talking about how low levels of CO over a period of time, carbon monoxide, can kill you. And that's kind of what we do in our field every day, right? Well, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back. My name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekday. Today is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Available on podcast for your listening pleasure. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about job safety. And it never had dawned on me. And the worst thing about it is, Hearthman is a retired paramedic and also is certified now in carbon monoxide stuff. Is that I was an EMT for almost 18 years. And it was one of those things that I was a volunteer and one of the best jobs I ever had. Some of the best and worst, right? You see the best and the worst of people. But I understand, and because we ran into it numerous times of carbon monoxide poisoning. Usually, if the power failed and they were trying to keep warm, they'd take something inside a salamander, or a kerosene heater, and not have a well-ventilated area, and actually could die from it. And I can remember going into people's homes, checking on them with the power outage, and seeing the kid's face just covered with soot of where they were trying to stay warm in the house, and they were getting sick. And that's how they were getting sick, is because carbon monoxide poisoning. And the worst thing is, it's odorless, tasteless, you don't know what's going on other than a few symptoms if you realize what's going on with it, right? How does that relate to us in small engine repair, farm tractor repair? It's because some of us install generators, all right? And we need to get a firm understanding of how that generator is going to be used. And not only used, but if you are an installer and you install 4 generators, and you're testing them all, and you're taking in low levels of CO, carbon monoxide, it could take a couple weeks to see the real effects of what's going on, right? You might feel, woozy, problem with thought memory, fatigue. And we experience that. I experienced that, from time to time in the shop. And more so in the winter months than in the summer, because during the winter months, everything is closed up, right? And we still, if we're going to run a generator to test it out, we still point the exhaust out the garage door so it's not blowing in. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all the CO levels are going to go out that door, right? But we run a risk in our profession of getting just this. And don't take my word for it. I want you to go take and Google it, what browser you use, and just type in low-level carbon monoxide poisoning. And this could be produced off from any combustion engine. Whether it be a chainsaw, weed eater, generator, lawnmower, snowblower, tractor. It's anything that is burning fuel. So how do we make our job safer? How do we make it safer for us? Because in the end, I want everybody to go home with all their toes and fingers and doing good, right? That's any shop owner, boss, what have you. Even just employee want all their friends to go home with everything intact, right? But this is an unseen enemy. And you should have CO detectors and fire alarm detectors in the shop already, right? I hope you do. But what I'm looking at and what I'm reading, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Hearthman, you can kind of take us to the next level, and that is that the carbon monoxide monitor isn't going to really pick up that much on the low levels that we may entertain and be around during the day. Let's say you do some work on a generator and you say, shoot, I'm not going to take it outside. I'm just going to fire it up in here for a minute. And you let it run in the shop. All right? And shut it off after a minute or two. But you got the smell of gas, you got the exhaust smell, and there's nowhere to have that dissipate. You're setting yourself up for disaster. And the last thing I want to hear is one of you guys or you get sick or even worse, die from carbon monoxide poisoning. So your monitors will pick it up when you start getting up into the levels, right? It'll go off. And what I'm talking about is long-term exposure at low levels, not high levels, low levels. And what we do is we're exposed to that low levels all the time. So the question goes to, and I'm looking for you as an answer as well, is how do we lower the risk to our industry? How do we get it so that, so I would think you'd want a well-ventilated area, right? And a lot of times in the winter months, that's hard to do, right? Because everything's closed up. You're trying to keep heat in the shop. I know car garages. They run, if they're going to start a vehicle inside, they have this tube that they draw and they stick it onto the exhaust pipe so that it pumps all the fumes out the door, right? But even those guys during the summer, I see them start a car in those bays and don't feel, I don't want to say you're lazy, but you just say, well, screw it isn't going to matter just this one time, right? Yes, it will. So let me know what you think on that. I think it's really important. I think I have a lot more to learn. I'm going to do some more research on it. But the title, your job could be really killing you. It rings home, right? I thought the worst that we'd have would be, cuts and bruises and that. But now we have to worry about this low level. And what I can tell you is all the years that I was an EMT, I don't think we ever discussed low levels. We always discussed carbon monoxide poisoning. That was part of our training and what to look for. And, get the people out to fresh air as quickly as you can. distinguish whatever kerosene heater that they're running inside the house. We saved a family of 4 by doing random checks to make sure everybody was okay during the ice storm. But on that note, I like to, I think you guys like to hear my stories anyways. And Hearthman brought up me thinking back, because with him saying he's a retired paramedic, I'm a retired EMT. And like I say, I did that 18, 19 years until I was hurt, disabled in a mining accident. And as much as they hated to say no, I was now a liability. I had lift issues. I had, things that if I did it while I was on the job, I could hurt myself more, right? And that's a liability. And one of the things that you needed to be able to do was lift and lower patients on gurneys and, get them into the ambulance and stuff. And it's a young man's game. And I encourage, if any of you guys out there are young and you've been thinking about joining in our area, it's a local unpaid fire department in our area. And you still have to go take a college course and test out. And the test out isn't easy, You have to make sure you do everything right. A lot of times it's just common sense. The old days of the tourniquets are gone. It's direct pressure is all you need. But some of the best things that I liked about being an EMT was homemade goods. And I know right now you're trying to figure out the correlation, right? See, when I joined the department, I joined it because I wanted to help others. That's it. I'm not getting paid. They aren't paying for gas in my vehicle to come in to do calls. And the only reason that you would be there, in my eyes, is to help others. Or we had a couple of them that were, I call the siren, lights and siren guys. And they used to hate me because when you're an EMT in the back, you control that ambulance. And my feeling was that it usually caused more harm than good of running the lights and the siren because everybody trying to get off the side of the road, they're on the other side of the road, they're gawking and not paying attention to the driver ahead of them that's pulling over, and they're still plowing their way down through. So unless it was a life or death, I never ran the lights and siren. And actually, I think now they have it so that the only time that lights and siren can run is if it's cardiac. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. But I lived out on the fringe. And when I say the fringe, I mean the outer area of the township. So for me to get into town, to hop on an ambulance, would take, it's about 6.5 miles. All right. And when I first joined, we had pagers you could plug in. They would go off for people that weren't in town to hear the siren blowing. And we had our own radios, the EMTs did, that we kept plugged in. But what I found after the first year and a half, I went to the chief and I said, look, I, as far out as I am, I can cover this whole area out here. And it's going to take you guys in town a good 10, 15 minutes to get assembled and get rolling towards a patient that needs you out here. Whereas if I carry in a jump bag, oxygen, basic first aid stuff, you know, I could be there in minutes. So it was decided that yes, that was a great idea because I was answering most of the ambulance calls anyways. There were three of us, and we were the calls. We had almost 15 EMTs, but there was only three of us doing the work because the other people either were working during the day when I was around farming and stuff, or they didn't want to get out of bed to come in to do the call. But I did a lot of midnight to 5 a.m. calls to go help people out. So with living out on the fringe and having a jump bag, we would get those calls, and it was mostly from elderly living alone. And they would call 911 and say they thought they were having, heart issues, the chest pains and stuff. So the alarm would go off at the station and on my pager. And if they were right up in my area, my jump bag was right in my truck. I would drive to there, and just as I was showing up, if the station still didn't have an EMT, I could tell them to roll. Because the last thing you want is an ambulance roll up on scene to help patients and families, and nobody's there to help. All you have is a driver. So I would wait until I was on scene and then cut the ambulance loose. By the time I got my prep done, the O2 on, did my vitals, I had toe check, the ambulance was usually pulling in if I needed them. But what I found was, with the number of elderly, especially women, is that they were more lonely. They just wanted to talk to somebody. So I started figuring out who these people were, right? And I would give them our phone number at the house. And I would tell them, look, before you call 911, give us a call. Give me a call. And a lot of times either me or my wife would go up and sit and visit with them. And the best part of sitting and visiting with them is they always had hot cookies or fresh homemade bread, and you started putting some weight on, but they just needed somebody to talk to. And my wife she would go around from one to the next, and during the daytime instead of in the middle of the night, and go visit with them and see how they're doing, if they needed anything. And she would take them if they needed to go get groceries or this or that. But that was the great part of the job, was all you had to be was a good listener. And the calls dropped for our department like a third. Just by doing what we were doing, my wife and I. And that is listening to the older folks during the day instead of the middle of the night. And it's pretty sad, when you think about it, that someone needs to call 911 because they're lonely. And they're up in the middle of the night. And if they're really lonely and you really get into, a downward, I want to say, not depression, but sadness, a lot of the things that can come from that are chest pains, tightening of the chest. But if you're able to talk with others, and this day and age, it's so easy. You got cameras, you got the internet, and you guys that have got older parents, you can set them up so that you can talk to them on a daily basis or a weekly basis by using the computer. And you say, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You'd be surprised at what grandma will do so that she can talk to you, if not over the phone, through the computer, so she can see you and the grandkids, right? So I'm going to start wrapping that up, but do some research on it. And Hearthbane, if you have more to add, please add. But we run a risk in our profession of small engine repair and tractor repair of getting these low levels over a period of time that can be deadly. And you need to be aware of that. I needed to be aware of that. And I can see Jason also with Generac, because I've never seen that in Champion or Generac training. The low level. We've always talked about the high level, but not the low level. So on that note, you guys have a great Wednesday, and we'll catch you here bright early tomorrow morning. Again, thanks so much for watching.